Hitmen dressed in fake police tactical gear burst into a home in Phoenix, rake it with gunfire, and execute a man. Armed kidnappers snatched victims from cars and even a local shipping mall across the Phoenix Valley for ransom, turning the sun-baked city into the kidnap capital of the U.S. Violence of this kind is common in Mexico, where drug cartel abductions and executions are a daily feature of the raging drug war that claimed 6,000 lives south of the border last year. Today I want to awaken you to the escalating drug war, but more importantly to how it has directly affected the U.S. and its citizens and small towns that border Mexico. I'm sure all of you have been informed about the violence south of the border. However, this violence is plaguing cities like Phoenix, El Paso, and San Diego, and the spreading of violence is being termed overspill. I'd like to cover a few points, the first being a brief summary of the major Mexican drug cartels and their political influence on their government and local authorities. Secondly, I'd like to discuss the U.S. influence and involvement in the drug war. And lastly, I'd like to discuss possible long-term and short-term solutions. First, I'll discuss the drug cartels. According to the Mexican government, there are 7 major drug cartels, but I'll just go over 4. You have the Tijuana cartel, the Juarez cartel, Sinaloa cartel, and the Gulf cartel. In recent years, the major cartels have formed alliances with one another, and the 2 rival alliances now compete for turf. The Tijuana cartel formed alliance with the Gulf cartel as a result of prison negotiations by their leaders. And several others formed an alliance known as the Federation. So maybe like the Sinaloa and the Juarez, they formed an alliance to compete against one another. The cartels work together but remain independent organizations. So basically they run the same routes, but they remain independent of each other. They don't spread profit and share wealth like that. This is just a basic map of Mexico. It shows some of the major cities like TJ, Nuevo Laredo, Juarez, and how close they are. Right here I have an image of, and again, it's just it's not clearly defined. It's just an estimation, really. We got some of the major cartels and some of the territory that they run, like the TJ on all the way to the far left, and also the Gulf to the right. Basically, these drug cartels have been waging turf wars with one another for the past decade. It wasn't until Felipe Calderon took office in 2006 that the drug wars really escalated. He deployed thousands of federal troops and aggressive crackdown on drug-related violence, and the root of this violence stems from bigger problems. Murders and street gun battles are only part of a more entrenched problem that includes corrupt police forces and a lackluster judiciary system. The Council on Foreign Relations reports Mexico's judges are often intimidated when they try to prosecute drug cases. And the police are compromised by the law of what is called plato o ploma, which is a choice between accepting bribes from a criminal organization or simply being killed. They've been using scare tactics such as narco-terror, and they've been using death threats, like in the city of Juarez. The mayor, his name is, or not the mayor, excuse me, the chief of police, Roberto Orduña Cruz, received death threats from the Gulf cartel, basically saying if you didn't resign, we would execute an officer every 48 hours. And they held to their word, successfully killing about 4 or 5 officers, and then he did resign. Also, the cartels have an involvement with all U.S. gangs, big gangs such as MS-13 and Latin Kings. They work with them, and they just use basically a wholesale. They don't charge a price, and the gangs get to distribute drugs as they please, and it's caused a big problem in our prison systems as well. In San Diego, a mother was kidnapped and a daughter was abducted recently, and this is a result of ransoms because of the enforcement of military, they've been cracking down on the drug routes. So now the cartels have been using scare tactics and using ransoms to make money as well, instead of focusing on their drug trade. And also the city of El Paso has been affected heavily because it borders right across from Juarez, and many El Pasoans have been abducted, as many as 70, and really it's gotten, a lot of them will go unreported, so they don't really know how many have there been. Next, I'd like to briefly discuss the U.S.'s role in this drug scenario. Many Americans are worried about their safety in Mexico, when one of the reasons the Mexican government is having such a difficult time fighting the drug cartels is because the enemy has plenty of money and guns, which ironically comes from the north, the U.S. According to most estimates, about 90% of all cocaine flowing into the U.S. comes from Mexico, and about 90% of the drugs smuggled into Mexico are coming from the U.S. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms estimates as many as 2,000 weapons enter Mexico daily, which fuels the arms race between competing drug cartels. The eruption of violence has many experts foreseeing a future in which Mexico could become a failed state. But CNN political analyst Ruben Aporet claims Mexico is still a functioning democracy with press freedoms and bold leaders like Calderon, who are taking the issue of drug violence head on, and there's plenty of reason for optimism. Lastly, I'll present possible solutions for the reduction of violence and drug trafficking. One of the best possible solutions is aiding Mexico with funding in order to combat drug trade. Washington stepped up support for Calderon, placed into Mexico helicopters, surveillance aircraft, inspection equipment, and police training under a $1.4 billion plan. Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano stated last week that she would focus efforts on curbing the southbound traffic in guns that are being used to arm the cartels. Also, the Meridia Initiative was passed, which is a U.S.-Mexico counter-drug operation or cooperation, which allows the two countries to work together. And placing stringent regulations on purchasing weapons is another effective method, and a measure of that commitment. A Phoenix gun dealer went on trial last week on charges he sold hundreds of weapons, including AK-47 assault rifles, to smugglers, knowing they would knowing that they would be sent to the Gulf Cartel and the Sinaloa Cartel. Drug treatment in the U.S. would be another effective method. Implementing more drug testing on the workplace would lower drug use, which in effect would decrease drug trafficking. In effect, U.S. and Mexican officials have disregarded the possibility of ending the war on drugs in the near future. The truth is that the cartels possess wealth, weaponry, and manpower. President Felipe Calderon expects at least 5 years before seizing all major drug routes, but with the help from U.S. and other countries, Mexico expects violence and drug trade to reduce significantly.
Thank you. All right, Eric, I think you've got a dramatic visualization at the beginning of the speech, but you kind of rush it because I'm not sure everybody's focused on you at that particular point. The topic is clear. You have a very good thesis statement, and there's an excellent preview of what the content's going to be. The supporting material, sometimes I'm getting quotes and citations, and sometimes it sounds like I'm getting quotes and citations from inside another article, and if you're quoting another article, then that needs to be cited as well. We're running into a similar issue here. There are a couple of terms that are little bit tip-offs of that sort of thing. The CNN commentator quote, pledging is awkwardly phrased, and Napolitano is a name that you had a little bit of trouble with, and it sounds like that's actually somebody else's article that's being quoted there, so you want to make sure that you are citing those sources. Your internal organization is very clear. The signposts are smooth. When you get to the last point, it sounds like a persuasive speech. Sugar.